I hope you realize that you've made a perfect fool of yourself in front of everyone. Have you finished?
Yes, I have.
Thank you very much.
Hi there. If you were one of those kids who saw Aladdin and then really wished you had a pet tiger like Raja, this may be the 1930s screwball comedy for you. This is Bringing Up Baby from 1938. It's directed by Howard Hawks, and it stars as its two leads, Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant. So Cary Grant is a paleontologist who gets bamboozled by a woman called Susan when he catches her eye. She uses the excuse of a leopard in her bathroom to draw him away from his fiance and from his wedding day, and to try and steal him for herself, essentially. There's a lot more to this plot than that. That's just kind of the loose through line of it. Baby is a gift from Susan's brother from South America. And there's also scenes where they're in jail, scenes when they're on a golf course, scenes when they're in a restaurant, and some great scenes around Susan's aunt's farm where they take the leopard to. So there's a lot of crazy things going on here. Screwball comedy was very popular in the 30s. It's very fast-paced, witty dialogue. The comedy revolves a lot around a romantic couple, and sometimes there's like physical comedy as well, but the main comedy is usually the dialogue. So the dialogue in this film is some of the tightest screwball dialogue you will ever hear. This film, I remember watching this growing up, and I remember watching this with some people at film school. It's one of those films that is on a lot of must-watch lists. And I remember I was the only person in the room laughing. I was like, this film is so good. I'm so excited that we're watching this today. And I was the only one that enjoyed it. But I did watch it again recently, and I realized I'd never reviewed it and shared it with you guys. Only because I'd seen it a few times, but I figured, now is a good time to share it with you. So me and a friend of mine watched it together, quarantine style, over sort of online, share screen style. And I'm so glad I did, because I feel like this is one of those films, there's so much that goes on, and so much good dialogue, and so many little like kind of throwaway moments that are amazing, that you can watch this film so many times and get something a little bit different out of it every time. What amazes me most about this film is that it absolutely tanked at the box office. It did so badly. It went over budget by a lot, and it went, I think, like something like 40 days over schedule, which in the really tight scheduling of the studio system kind of days, that was really bad. Partly they say that it was because Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn got along so well, and the dialogue was so funny that they just kept laughing, just falling over laughing. But I mean, I don't want to blame them because I like them so much. So they obviously had a really, really good time making this. So it's insane that this was just a flop. Because this did so badly, this was one of the first movies that Howard Hawks made for this studio, and he was fired. And Katharine Hepburn made it onto the box office poison list. So the box office poison moniker, I suppose you could say, was from an article that a newspaper wrote, and it kind of is a story perhaps in and of itself that I should probably do separately, but several really big stars were named box office poison because if they were in a film, the film wouldn't do well, and even though they had talent, they were just never in good films. And and so it actually was quite harmful to a few people's careers. But it's also kind of funny because some of the people that were on the box office poison list continued to have excellent careers. Like Joan Crawford was an actress till quite late in life, and some of the people who were listed in the article as being really good and the opposite of box office poison are not often remembered, perhaps. So it's kind of interesting, but it was a couple of years before Hepburn's career came back from this film. But she's really good in it. The film's kind of tailored to her and her clipped kind of style that she has. She's kind of got a patrician kind of voice, slightly. How does one describe her? She comes across as elegant and intelligent and smart, but just oblivious. And in this, that's really played up to great effect. I think this is one of those films that you could just watch for for Katharine Hepburn's clothes. She is so slender and tall in this film. I don't think I've ever seen anyone that slim. But her clothes are beautiful. They're all tailored. There's little ruffles, and she has such a beautiful figure, and her hair is so nicely done as well in that kind of late 30s style. So she's fun to watch for that reason as well. They also have some great locations in this film. The farmhouse is really cozy and cute. The restaurant is really... you just don't see restaurants like that anymore. It's a beautiful location. Even her apartment, I was drooling over her bathroom and her telephone and stuff. So it's such a lovely... Films were very lavish. And screwball comedies as well were kind of set in a certain, I think sort of upper middle class generally. So if you want to know more about screwball comedies, I did do a review of The Awful Truth. It's here on YouTube as well. So if you want to watch that one, I just go a little bit more into the exact kind of genre tropes of screwball. But this one really influenced comedy and comedy dialogue because it was so snappy. So speaking of comedy, this is Cary Grant's he plays a kind of awkward professor type, but still very dashing and handsome. And in the restaurant scene, he has his top hat and tails on. Like, he's very... You can see why Susan is kind of in love with him. They're kind of two halves of a whole in a way. He's very intelligent about his paleontology, but he's kind of a bit of a pushover in other ways. But he's so comedic in this, and you see him in other things. He plays a much more dashing kind of character, more of a heartthrob or whatever you want to call them, what we call him at the time. But here he's much more goofy. He's really adorable with his brill creamed hair. Oh, there's a funny little side fact that I wanted to mention to you guys as well. So this may not be the actual first, but it's often considered to be the first or one of the first uses on screen in a popular context of the word gay as meaning homosexual instead of gay as meaning happy. So there's a scene where Cary Grant, he has to take a shower because he's had mud all over his clothes, and he ends up having to borrow a lady's dressing gown with like marabou feather trim, and he makes a joke at that point, and it's just really funny, but it's just kind of interesting. So there you go. After this film, Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn went on to do 3 more, I think, together, because they have that real chemistry. I think the Philadelphia Story is probably the one 2 years after this where she got her career back on track, and it was very popular. But this film was hugely influential to later film goers. I feel like Bringing Up Baby, there's a lot going on, and I think there's so much in this film. There's a lot of kind of sexual politics and all of the rom-com back and forth where you kind of have to question Susan's morality stealing somebody else's fiance. But his fiance is also quite interesting. She's sort of the opposite of Susan. She's very she loves the paleontologist for his paleontology work, and she wants to marry him to keep him on the straight and narrow. And she even kind of says some stuff at the start that would imply that they would have kind of a sexless, childless marriage so that he could focus solely on his work. And his face is so funny when she says it. Like, he kind of accepts it, but he's a bit like, oh, okay. It's so funny. So there's some kind of lots of layers here with these kinds of jokes. So yeah, bringing up baby, I think I could go into this quite a lot with all the different layers, as I said. But I think if you've not seen this film, you should definitely check it out, because it really hasn't dated that much. There's not really many like pop culture references that you just wouldn't understand or anything like that. And because it's so fast paced and much faster paced than modern comedies, like Bringing Up Baby, even compared to other screwball comedies, is insanely fast. And it's so good. It just blows my mind that it didn't do that well at the box office. But to be fair, it had gone so much over budget that it probably needed to do insanely well at the box office to make its money back. But yeah, that is Bringing Up Baby. A little short one for you today. Definitely one to watch for the costumes if you're that kind of person. I know I am. I'm definitely someone who loves to see the clothes and how fashion was influenced by cinema. And Katharine Hepburn is so young, and yet they're so well directed in this film. So get yourself a copy of Bringing Up Baby and watch it, and then come find me in the comments and tell me what you thought.